Hey, welcome to the News Rocky Show. This is your host, Kevin Skulchek, coming to you live from the Pie Hop Studio at 80 Broadway in downtown Norwich. We have a very special guest who's going to be calling in from the road today, Gordon Videll, the famed attorney from the city of New London in the state of Connecticut. This guy knows more about the dirty, dark secrets of everybody playing the game out there in the world today. He's going to talk about Epstein. He's going to talk about the Clintons. He's going to talk about the dark side. He's going to talk about anything and everything. And by the way, guys, every time Gordon talks, he's usually right. So stay tuned, stay in the ring, and get back to me each and every day. We come to you with this live content. Gordon's going to be a really interesting guest, guys, so make sure you get back in the ring with News Rocky. Thank you, guys, and welcome back to the News Rocky Show. And on the line today, as we said, we have a very special guest. It's Gordon Videll, famed attorney from the city of New London, Connecticut, that is. He is well known to rock the microphone. He and his wife have been doing a talk show for about, how many years you been doing this talk show down there, Gordon?
About 4 years.
About 4 years. And so you and your wife are both practicing attorneys. You and your wife are both very interested in the topic of the day. You seem to be one of the more skilled folks I know, and certainly I turn to you for answers. When it comes to some of those questions, I guess they would call the deep state, what gets you involved in even researching those things? Most people want to go to bed with no nightmares. You seem to delve right into it.
Yeah, it's not something that happened overnight. I mean, I've been wondering what really goes on behind the scenes for years and years. I mean, it's not. It's funny because everybody now is an expert on the deep state, but unless you put in the work, you really are just kind of regurgitating what other people are saying. And we try to do it a little differently so that we put meat on the bones, get facts out there, and let the people decide what's real and what's not.
So when you're putting meat on the bones, you're talking about taking a topic such as, we can get into wherever you want to go today, Gordon, because I want to say to you, honestly, I'm honored to have you on with me. And I mean, no, that's not sarcastic. I know I'm well known to be an arrogant, sarcastic person. I'm being honest. You're a good friend. You've always been that way to me, and I appreciate you taking time today, actually going to a closing, right? You're on the road actually traveling to a closing as we speak.
Yeah, and I apologize if I have bad reception because I am in the middle of nowhere.
No, we appreciate you taking the time today to be calling in with us. So when we talk about the deep state and some of the topics that are out there, I think most of the folks on their mind, first and foremost, seems to be the Jeffrey Epstein issue, the connection to maybe Pizzagate and the Clinton connection, and or whoever else is out there. I'm not an expert, Gordon, but you are certainly someone I refer to. What's your thoughts on that whole scenario that's been taking place in this country called Pizzagate?
Well, I let's not go right there. Let's start with the deep state because
there you go.
Frankly, the deep state has been bastardized like the left and the media like to do. If they don't like a word or if they want to discredit it, they change the meaning of it. So deep state really comes from that's been around for a long time, and it comes from an organization or a group of people that are political loyalists for the most part, and it's the senior executive staff, I believe, is the last letter. It's SES. It's the Senior Executive Service. That's what it is. And there's 8,000 members of that group. That group is the highest level of federal employees. They are represented in 75 different agencies. They make as much as the vice president. And it started with Jimmy Carter. He started appointing these. It's basically a way to promote people beyond the highest step. And what it's become is the group of people that run the country during transitions. So it doesn't matter who you have in there as president. These guys are the ones that are making the decisions from a day-to-day basis that form the opinions for the president to make decisions. So they can influence a president who has opposite views in many ways simply by proving that you can't do what you want to do and then forcing an issue. But oftentimes what they'll do is lay in wait until a president, and Trump's a perfect example, you have 8,000 of these people who are the highest level, and they form the policies within the federal government which we have to abide by. So that's what deep state is. What they've tried to turn it into is the deep state is the media and Epstein and it's everything else. That the deep state is that service. It's those people. And James Comey's a great example of that. Here's a guy who is a millionaire times over, but he allegedly had worked for the government his whole life. That doesn't make sense. But what this status gives you, it gives you the ability to make lots of money. You can jump from agency to agency, and you also are allowed to leave and come back. So in the case of James Comey, I believe he went to work for a year. He went to work for one of the defense contractors, and he was rewarded with, I believe, a $12 million payday.
Isn't that true though, Gordon? Of even politicians, we see the president-elect Joe Biden. He's worth lots of money, and he's been on the government sort of dole his whole career. So it's not really much different in some aspects of the elected officials.
Well, it's entirely different because these people aren't elected, and we don't get to choose them. They're appointed, and they're there as long as they want to be there.
Interesting.
So these are the people who run the country, and then you could say, some people believe run the world through our policies. Mm-hmm. Now the question then becomes, how do they get there? Well, they're appointed by presidents. They're promoted, and again, start with Jimmy Carter, and he was probably thinking, we have to find a way to keep our best talent and reward these people. What it's become is an indoctrination, and ultimately, these people are rewarded for being loyalists and carrying the water. And make no mistake, if I am one of those people, I'm going to make sure we hire more people that think like me, that carry on. And that's what the deep state is. It shouldn't be confused with all this other stuff, the swamp and all of that, because ultimately those have their own problems and they're all related. But that's what the deep state is. And now it's been bastardized. And now if you say deep state, you're a conspiracy theorist. Look up senior executive service, and you'll see who's on that. I mean, there's 800 and some odd members of that group in the Justice Department. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the ultimate payoff if you're in federal service. And that's what people get confused about, and they fall into the trap of the media.
So you're saying the movers and shakers really in this governmental sort of backroom dealings are these folks that are actually appointed, these folks that have jobs that are long-term, different administrations, they continue to work through the administrations, and they make these deals. What are they doing with this advantage of being, sort of in these controlled positions?
Well, they're setting policy, federal policy. Example, Department of Defense is obviously loaded with them. Department of Interior loaded. Department of Energy right now is probably one that's most interesting because I think there's 600 in that agency. I mean, why do you need 600 people there? Well, because that's where the money is. So that's really how it gets controlled on a federal level, in a policy level.
What's the most dangerous, Gordon? What's the most dangerous deep state thing that ever took place that you could reflect on in history that's affected us as Americans, in your opinion?
Well, it's whatever policy becomes. I say everything that happens in the Treasury Department is a function of the deep state. And you see right now with where we're headed, we're printing trillions of dollars. And, how do you print trillions of dollars and not have inflation? Mm-hmm. These are the things that are going to destroy America. So to combat that, what's happening right now, and if you do your research, you'll find out it's all being rolled out. We're going to an electronic form of currency. The fiat currency that we currently use is not going to be what our children use. Mm-hmm. So an example, imagine this. To avoid inflation, we've used every trick there is. There's only one trick left. You hear about banks talking about negative interest. You've heard that term?
Yes.
Well, how do you make money if you're doing negative interest? You don't. How do you lend money if you're getting paid back less? You don't. So what's going to happen is ultimately everybody's going to have a bank account that can give negative interest if the money isn't spent. So what that does is it ensures there's two parts of the system that create inflation. It's velocity and money supply. The The money supply is out of control. That's not a problem as long as the money's all being spent quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But once people start storing money, that's when you get inflation. It's far more complicated than that, but
that's the nutshell. That's a little bit of a nutshell version.
That's a nutshell. So in order to ensure everybody is spending their money, they're going to take it from you if you don't spend it quickly. Now, that's frightening enough, but there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of it. So the sell will be easy. All of these stimulus packages, these payouts, all these people complaining they didn't get money for months. Well, if you have this account, it appears in a snap of a finger. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of good things that can happen there also. But that is right now the biggest one. And it's not sexy. It's not 9/11. It's not JFK. It's not anything like that. But listen, if you control the money, you can have as many armies against me as you want as long as I can control the money, and I'll win. And that is ultimately what will control the world. And remember, this is a game of power and money. Mm-hmm. And under this stimulus package and the last one, it's the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of man. You have billionaires who have made trillions. Meanwhile, people aren't allowed to open their store.
What do you think about the debate over $600 stimulus checks versus $2,000 and the play out that you're talking about, all these massive billions and trillions of people still making money during COVID? Do you think that's just part of that whole deep, dark state of people playing the game?
Well, I think Pelosi wouldn't allow the $2,000. That was just pure politics.
Really?
But ultimately, they're going to roll it out again. Well, she couldn't let Trump get credit for that.
Okay.
So I think ultimately the 2,000 will come, or maybe it'll be 1,400 more, whatever it turns out to be. The printing presses are not going to stop. There's no way for it to stop right now. That's why I always encourage people to at least hedge their bets, because we're at the end of a deflationary period. The cycle is clear. So we're going to start an inflationary period. They're going to fight it for a while.
Where should I put my money? Where should I invest all my millions and billions of dollars then?
Well, if you listened to me 6 months ago, you would have put it into Bitcoin, and you would have triple what you have now.
We would have been living in the islands, you and I?
Well, yeah. There's no doubt about it. But another great example, remember when we went off the gold standard,
yep.
That was all very much part of this. And that at that point, gold was worth $35 an ounce, I believe. Okay. And then within a short period of time, it went up to $800 an ounce. Now think of that multiple and then equate it to today, because we have the same problem, right? We have to fight inflation. So now if it's at $1,900 thereabouts right now, if you use that same math, an ounce of gold is going to be worth a fortune.
So isn't Bitcoin really what you're talking about in the evolution of this economic sort of, control, right? Bitcoin and the technology piece has really become the dominating factor. It's really no longer those precious minerals or those, even oil or across the board, those typical investments of the past. How much does technology play into where this goes going forward, in your opinion?
Well, it's everything. It's everything. This is a technocracy. I mean, we are controlled by big tech, and big tech is given their permission by the government, and the government is created by the media, and the media is controlled by the CIA, and everything I just said is documentable, going back to the 40s. And so when I hear people talk about the politicians control the media, it's quite the opposite. Not only do they control the politicians, they create the politicians. Great example: Rand Paul and his dad never get any airplay during debates and things like that, because they're a danger to the system.
They'll call it out. They call it out.
They call it out. And what do we do to people who call it out? Mm-hmm. We ignore them and give them no airtime, and they go away because nobody knows who they are.
So when you talk about this in sort of, you said the presidential sort of campaigns, we saw Rand Paul during that 2016. We now see President Donald Trump, who was elected in 2016, the battles that were ensued against him. Did he kind of push back on this, or is he knows the same thing you're talking about, because he wouldn't be in where he is now without it? In business, do you think this is an example of President Donald Trump wanting to expose things, but doing it also with his pocketbook concern?
Yeah, I do. And I think look, there's a million bad things you can say about Donald Trump, but there's a million great things you can say about the policies. I mean, there's two things I always point to when I get in discussions with people on the left who just want to, they just hate Trump, and that's their underlying factor. I mean, and my question is always the same: is it the lack of war, or is it him going after human traffickers that bother you the most?
What's your reaction? What's your reaction from people when you say that, Gordon? Gordon Videll on the phone with us, famed attorney, talking about some of his opinions on the current situation here. Do you find most people, when you have that discussion, they just want to call you like the crazy one?
Well, that's an easy knee-jerk reaction, but we can't react to that. We just have to give more facts. And I defy people to tell me what policy is it that Biden put forward that you're voting for, because I've yet to hear one.
Right.
I've yet to hear any, and I can give you 50 really great things that Trump did, and some knucklehead things too. But he is a master of publicity, and what's going on right now. I have no idea where this ends, but it seems like everything's coming to a crescendo, and it's like he's gearing up for the finale rather than rolling the alleged evidence out systematically, which would have been the way to do it.
So as we're talking with Gordon Videll, we're covering some topics, and I want to be much more respectful than I have in the past. You've been a gentleman to come on the show before, the News Rocky show.
Stop it.
And Gordon, listen, I bow down to your intelligence. You're an intellectual, advanced person. I realize that. I'm nothing more than a water carrier myself for you, and I realize that. I want you to know that. So, I mean, if I can say anything, I want to say that I love listening to your conversation because I know you come deeply rooted with, research. Where do you find the time as a practicing attorney, a husband and a father, and, a community activist? Where do you find the time to get involved in making sure, are you like a Martian or something with an extra brain?
Not at all, but I do. Well, now my referral sources have grown since I've had the show because people send me things now. But I've always dug a little bit deeper. When I read an article, I try to source it. And then once you source it, you see, oftentimes it's a George Soros run whatever that gave this quote, which became an NBC article. Things like that.
So do you believe fake news is a reality? When you hear this President of the United States and News Rocky itself, the sort of, the birth of this concept show here with me in this seat, and I'm not as skilled as you when it comes to the deeply rooted investigation. I'm just a punch you in the face kind of guy. But do you believe news and fake news is a reality controlled by corporate media?
Well, it absolutely is. I mean, I would encourage everybody just to go to it's just funny. Go to YouTube, put in CNN fake news, and it'll show you the most ridiculous things. My favorite one is there was a reporter during the Gulf War who was allegedly in the Gulf, but he was actually in the basement of CNN with fake palm trees, and they caught him off camera. It was hilarious.
I hear what you're saying, and I have some of those same. I'm agitated sometimes when I see Don Lemon or whatever, the CNN, CNBC, and quite frankly, there's times on Fox News that when I watch that or some of the other sources that you can see how skewed it is, one side versus the other. How do we get back as a society, as Americans, back to real journalism, real news, or are we too far gone?
Well, I hope we're not too far gone. I mean, one thing we can do is break up the big tech companies. I mean, these are monopolies, and they control far more than they
Google needs to go? You want to get rid of Google?
Google needs to be split up.
Facebook
needs to be split up.
Okay.
I mean, these companies, they're vertically and horizontally integrated, which means they control their entire sphere, which means that there's no stopping them. And the problem is, Facebook, for instance, I would encourage everybody to go to the Leader Corp. Do you really think that Zuckerberg invented Facebook over a weekend in Harvard in a room? If you read anything by Leader, he's going to explain how he put tens of thousands of man hours and millions of dollars into creating social network platforming, put in a patent with a government, well-known government, our patent attorney, and lo and behold, Zuckerberg gets a hold of it and when he tries to fight it, they shut him down.
Slay, bring up a picture of Zuckerberg. You bring up this name, and now I'm fixated because every time I see him, he reminds me of one of my favorite movies, and it's Powder, the movie Powder. He looks like God. Powder. If you look at him, Gordon, he looks like the guy from Powder, man. I mean, I get amazed. I get fixated. I know I'm a simpleton, so I shouldn't say that. But I every now and then I just got to go there. But
the point is, the government has been stealing patents for probably over 100 years.
Okay.
And then they pick their winners who they can control.
Okay.
And it's no mistake that the CIA stopped their project.
There's Powder right there. I just brought Powder up for us and the audience. Please look at you. Argue with me whether or not that's Powder from the famed movie. Right there. Look at that. Beautiful. All right. I'm sorry. I cut you off again. I get it. You know, I have the ADD problem there. ADD problem.
I see that.
Go ahead, man. I won't interrupt again.
That's okay. So, I mean, they pick the winners that they can control, and it's no mistake the CIA stopped trying to develop something to track us from birth to death.
Okay.
When Facebook became that exact service. I mean, it's not.
So as
if you're not for service,
right. So as I'm listening to what you're saying, and the signal is going a little bit in and out, and we'll wait till you get a really solid signal here. I think one of the things that most people who are listening to the News Rocky show, one of the concerns we have is really we don't trust government. We don't trust folks that I talk to every day. They have a concern about government, the control of government. But you're a capitalist, right? I mean, Gordon, you're not a guy who wants to shut business down, right?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, you're good. But I'm saying to you, you're a capitalist. You think business is good for the American economy, correct? Yep, we're going to pick up that signal in a minute. When you got a really strong signal, we'll bring you back. And so when we're talking with Gordon Videll, one of the things we want to make sure the audience understands is Gordon's given a really good, deep look into some of these corruption claims. And when you look at Facebook or you look at those other organizations that are out there, Google, these are the companies, guys. When you're listening to News Rocky, you know, we don't want to like be mean-spirited to people, but there is such obvious corruption going on across this country and the world that people like Gordon, you dive in, you get deep. You're like a deep sea diver. Gordon, you back with me now or not?
I am. The problem is most people are happy with their little piece of turf and don't want to rock their world in any way. Okay. And that's why we have people who are afraid to say anything. Mm-hmm. Imagine if you're in Congress and you know the secrets and you're afraid to stand up. Who in their right mind would be afraid to say, you know what, there's a lot of questions here. Let's do a real investigation. Who in their right mind would not support that? Oh,
I would support 100%. Listen, we have two senators from the state of Connecticut who I refer to quite fondly as Chris Baby Arms Murphy and Twiggy Dickie Blumenthal. You know what? We're going to make a cartoon up about these two characters, by the way. I love Dick because you know what? Wait, I don't mean I love Dick. I love Dickie, the Senator Blumenthal, and because they're just such arrogant, wet-lipped politicians, Gordon. They want to talk about all the things they've done. What are they actually doing? I think they turn their back to all the realities of the world.
Well, they absolutely have. And don't forget, they kind of come from opposite sides. Blumenthal comes from one of the richest families in the world. And you have Murphy, who I believe declared bankruptcy at one point, strike that. I think he was in danger of losing his house, and then he got this gig. So
who hasn't been in that position? Jesus, I'm going to claim bankruptcy 3 more times before it's over, Gordon. Come on.
I don't think it was bankruptcy, but I think it was foreclosure. But the point is, watch his needle move. See what his net worth becomes.
Oh, he's making a lot of money.
Well, think about what balls it takes to give yourself an exception to not be prosecuted for insider trading. That's what Congress has done, and they stick with it. It makes no sense.
Do you think Joe Courtney, now you're from Connecticut, you're from this area. I personally think Joe Courtney is a really nice guy, but he plays the same game because when you get involved with the same deep-rooted sort of policymakers that are out there in Washington, D.C., representing Connecticut, I often feel like, you know what, it's a frustration because I see somebody who's really good and I believe has honesty in his heart. Go to Washington, D.C., and you know what happens? They get in that bath of shit, and all they do is stink every time they come out of it.
That's the problem. These guys get gobbled up by the system, and you would need, 50 of them will go at once to just clean house. And you're just not going to see that because, as we see, the elections are kind of predetermined.
Dude, let's talk about that. Can we get into elections? Because, I know I have you for a few more, and whenever you need to go, just give me a couple of minutes heads up so we can kind of transition over to the next part of the show here. Again, we have...
Yeah, I'm going to give you a couple minute heads up right now.
Okay, very good. I appreciate that. All your time is appreciated. The News Rocky Show wants to tell Gordon Videll, we have a picture of you and your wife up right now. It's a beautiful little black and white picture from your social media platform so the listeners can see it. You are outnumbered there. I'll tell you right now, most people don't understand why she ever chose you, Gordon, honestly.
Yeah, I listen. We don't have to go down that path.
Do you get that a lot, though? Do you get that a lot? Most people are like, why, Christine? What were you doing? Do you have an inheritance?
The pictures speak for itself.
Okay, Gordon. I'm just teasing me. I love you. So listen, we're talking about a lot of things. You got into that the deep state concept and the confusion between, even somebody like me that wants to say deep state's, Epstein. And when you go off the phone right now, I'm going to get into some other conversations about some of the things going on nationally. We're talking about this election. How much is the election, in your opinion, being controlled by corporate media? We'll wrap it up on this one. Not only corporate media, but the corporate control media with the political assistance of those people in power from the Senate and the House. Republicans and Democrats, they want Trump out. Do you think there's any credibility to what the claims are by the Trump campaign coming out of this election?
I think there's credibility to most of them, and at the very least, here's the problem. They started by saying months ago there's no such thing as election fraud. Well, that's not true. Then they started saying that this is the safest election ever. Well, now we know that's not true. They backpedal, and at the very least, there are questions here that have to be answered. My God, during the Georgia hearing, they had the computer scientist who I think invented the Q code for the packaging.
Yes,
I think that was him. He said he was hacked into the system that day, and it was feeding back and forward, which is supposedly not supposed to happen, which meant it was connected to the internet, which wasn't supposed to happen. And this is after all the allegations of fraud. So Wouldn't it be ironic if somebody hacked in and put 500 million votes in one way or the other?
So do you think that this might go into a congressional Senate? There's hearings that will take place. My personal opinion is, Gordon, quickly as we get ready to let you go to go do some real work, we're going to see Joe Biden get sworn in. The president's, he'll go in. He's the 46th, the 47th president, which will be Kamala Harris. Soonly will come into office as soon as he's mentally incapacitated or his son gets indicted. And now what happens to this country is we're going to learn about all the corruption and fraud. What do we do to fix it going forward? How do we win this battle for the American people?
I guess the good news is this. Well, if Biden gets in and...
He is in. Come on, Gordon. He's in.
Probably. If that happens, which is highly likely, and they kind of bolster the position of the tech companies that supported him and let the media run wild, then there's no coming back ever. However, the good news is at the state level, Republicans, and this isn't a Republican-Democrat thing, it's corrupt and not corrupt. Mm-hmm. But at least we need a two-party system to have a chance. And the states have spoken very loudly at the state level and the governor level that they're not going to stand for it. And I think that's what we have to look for and we have to hope for. And everybody has to stand up. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, and that's what's happened.
What is that? Stand up, stand back, or what was that? What did the president say?
I don't know what he said, but I'm saying stand.
Are you
up.
part of the Proud Boys?
No, are you?
Well, I am proud to be an American.
Well, I'm proud to be an American too.
Very good. Yeah, I couldn't get you on that one. You're so quick-witted. You were a debate team captain in New London High School, right? I bet you were.
No.
Hey, listen, I do want to tell you off. I'll give you a call tomorrow. I have some business actually I need to bring to you. So, Gordon, where can people find you, find information about you if you want them to chase you down for, to follow the famed Gordon Videll? Where can they locate you at, bud?
You can check it on Facebook, Gordon Videll, or Fix Me London by Gordon Videll. Okay. Or you can listen to us Sunday mornings at 94.9, 8 to 11.
Awesome stuff. So you're going to come up to the studio Bring the wife. We have a beautiful restaurant here called Pie Hops right below this studio. This isn't like some of the other studios you go to, Gordon. This place is hot and fancy, okay? So you want to be able to come here, check us out. I want you to come in the studio. I want to get a full hour or plus with you and the wife, Christine, and talk about some of these things a little deeper, because you are one of the most intelligent people I know. I'm not just sucking up to you for a good rate tomorrow when I call you with some business. But, Gordon, safe travels. Anything parting ways for the listeners of News Rocky?
Listen, everybody have faith. You're doing a great job. You're getting the word out. It's important that you're in my level, that people do the hard work that the general media is not willing to do. So God bless you and keep it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, guys, that was Gordon Videll, one of our good friends, I'll tell you honestly, one of the people I turn to on a routine basis if I have a question about some of the governmental issues that are going on, some of the things that are going on across this country. We talked a little bit about the election. And, this is where News Rocky gets into a rant right before the end of a show. Slade, what do we got left on the show? Total maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes or so? Because I need to know when I'm getting in the ring how much time I got to have before I knock somebody the fuck out. All right, that's 30 minutes total. We only have 30 minutes right now? You didn't count the first 15 minutes. But anyways, I'm ready to do this. I can do it. All right. So guys, you're staying tuned right here. You're with News Rocky. And what we're going to do now is I think they used to call this, what do you call it when you're on the mic and you just free, what is it called? Yell it out. Freestyle. That's right, from the audience. There it is. We're going to freestyle right now. So we talked to Gordon, right? We talked about the dark state. Well, guess what, guys? I looked at the dark state. I look at the deep state. I looked at the corruption of this government. And you know what? I don't think anyone is surprised to hear that money, power, they're all influences that have controlled the world since the beginning of the world. We all know that. Go back in history. You can go back through any civilization, any control, any real organized civilization. It's all been controlled by greed. This country, America, the greatest country on earth, by the way, the country where you see everything about me is, what'd I say? America. Fuck yeah. You know why I say that? Because I love this country. It's all about what we have. We have an opportunity each and every day to wake up. And you know what we can do? We can do anything we want to do. The bum underneath the street can make a decision tomorrow to get up, go get cleaned up, and go get a job. And you know what that bum can do? He can go on and become the president of the United States. Well, maybe not, but you know what I mean. I'm trying to say it's America, man. We're sick and tired of people taking advantage. You know what I find the most ironic? When I talk to people who are liberals, the Democrats, my friends, the people I love, you know what happens each and every time? We want the same thing, but we don't know how to agree on a couple of the fundamentals. The fundamentals come down to control, because when you get involved in politics, the first thing they give you is this. There's a lesson book, right? You got to take your little test before you qualify. Well, when you qualify, they talk like this. They tell you, look, you got to go out there. You got to say what the party says. You got to represent your party. You got to convince the people to vote like you. You want to convince them that we're right and they're wrong. Guess what? We're all fucking wrong. Every one of us are confused. None of us have the real answer. And as we continue to fight in this country each and every day over topics like the economy, the economics, COVID-19, for example, guys, who wants to argue with me? Are you at all paying attention? If you think for 1 minute, COVID-19, COVID's been around forever, right? It's a scientific definition for a certain disease or infection. Guess what, folks? It's come to this country when? Right at the turn of the election, for the presidential election, when Donald Trump kicked the balls in of China, then all of a sudden, this disease comes in and affects not just the country, but the most powerful country on earth, has seen the economy destroyed. The international affairs that Donald Trump has been stepping out in front of each and every year that he's been serving since 2016. This is the thing they're trying to destroy. And he talks about, Gordon did that is, about the dark state, the deep, dark state. You know what? These are the same people that want to destroy your president of the United States. Oh, Democrats, did that affect you because I said your president? Guess what? When Joe Biden's elected, he's my president. See, I'm honest enough. Are you honest enough to take off those blinding glasses of corruption and accept the reality of where we are in America? Guys, we just heard Gordon talk about other issues that take place in this country. Think about the big tech companies. You know, when you listen to folks that are out there who talk like Gordon, think about how tech controls us. We are all technically plugged in every day. We are plugged in through devices each and every day. We go on our Facebook, and guess what? Each and everything we do Everything we do is logged. I was in a meeting earlier today, and one of the topics that came up was TikTok. By the way, not only the China virus comes from China, so doesn't TikTok. You get it? It's all corruption. It's coming each and every day, and it's trying to take us down as American people. What are you going to do? If you're listening to News Rocky and you want to pay attention to the show, if you really care about your country, you got to stop caring about party politics. Now, you're easy to say, oh, Kevin, there you go again, talking about not me caring about party politics, but you want to carry the water for Donald Trump. You know why? I don't think Donald Trump's a politician. I've said it before on the show. Have you been listening? I've said it before on the show that if Bernie Sanders was elected, not ripped off by Hillary Clinton and the dirty bastards on the Democratic Party side, if Hillary Clinton didn't rip Bernie Sanders off, we would be in the same situation. Bernie Sanders, who earned and deserved an opportunity in 2016, came back into this election against Joe Biden, the corrupt politician of 48 plus years. And he lost again. Why? Not because he wasn't the favorite, because they didn't want him. You guys aren't waking up. If you think for a moment the votes that we're talking about, all this election noise, everything that's going on out there right now throughout the country, everything that's up, we're uprising, we're rising from the dead. Guys, people are upset. You know the average, by the way, they want to say all Donald Trump's supporters. These are the people who are basically, third grade educations. They're truck drivers. They're blue collar people. They're people that every other day 10 years ago didn't give a shit about politics. You know why? They just said, you know what, we can't do anything about it. Well, they hit their frustration level. And you know what? The folks in the control party politics in Hartford, not here just in Connecticut, but also in Washington, D.C. and across this country, we're calling you out. People like Gordon Videll, our special guest, who's going to be back on. He's going to talk deeper about the deep state. He's going to talk about the Epstein issue. Guys, the whole fact of the matter comes down to this. When you look at America, what we believe in America, we all believe in the same thing. You want what I want. I want what you want. There's nothing that we want to not have that's successful for America. Why do we have poverty in America still? When in every one of these Democratic-controlled states, every one of these Democratic-controlled cities across this America, why are these people still facing the same challenges when year after year they get the same lies given to them by a politician who says, I'm going to fix it? Why? Because that's how it is. The corrupt system keeps feeding us shit, and we keep eating it. This is News Rocky. Thank you for tuning in today. We'll see you in the ring tomorrow.